Hey gang, how you doing? East Coast Lumberjack here, Rod Cumberland. And this weekend, I want to talk about handle patterns. Okay, patterns of handles. And I get a lot of questions, what should go in this axe, what should go in that axe. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and let us know that you like the content. So the last one on on lubricants really sparked some people up, which is pretty neat because there's lots of things that people may think they know, and maybe you're a little bit off off kilter on on your thinking on some of that. I know I have been in the past, so I mean, and I still may be, but all I know is that Crown product is pretty good stuff. So we're here in the shop, and I want to show you some patterns. Okay. So now, let's see now. Let me grab a couple of heads. Okay. Any axe guy's got to have a few a few chunks of steel laying around somewhere. Okay, so hey, if this is your first time joining the East Coast Lumberjack, welcome. It's good to have you here. And as most people that have listened to this turkey for the last little bit know, this is usually my go-to. Okay, so I'm a lumberjack competitor, have been since '85, which is quite a while now. But usually the axes that I started learning on and doing things with were the big guys. Okay. Back in the day, they were actually high-test axes. When I first started competing in the late 80s, high-test was the way to go. And you had to know something about axes because you had to do all your own grinding on the axes yourself. And we're going to do a few videos on that stuff in a few weeks. But basically, that's where I learned. And, of course, back in the day, we used to actually grind them with grinders on the faces. And then everything else on the edges was all file. Okay, so the days of the grinder, and that's why I like grinders. Those people that have looked at the Makita belt sander, there's a reason for that, and that is because it takes a long time with a file. Okay, but that's how I learned, and it wasn't a bad thing because you learn a fair bit. So there's the big ones. Okay, now I would lump the other axes into three general categories. Okay, the first thing I would lump them into is something called a double bit. Okay, and a double bit handle, let's stick with the axis first. So there's a double bit, then there's single bits. Okay, just a bit on one end. The other big broad category would be a broad axe. Okay, a broad axe kind of axe, and then a hatchet. Okay, and I think I have, or I had, there's a little one. There we go. Okay, a small one. Now this is a pretty cool little axe. It's got a hammer on one end. It's been beat up a little bit here, but it's not in too bad a shape. It's even got the little thing here for pulling nails. So this was a specialty axe back in the day. Okay, so this is a pretty handy tool. Hammer on one end, axe on the other, nail puller. Okay, but generally speaking, it's a hatchet handle or a hatchet. So we've got double bitters, single bitters, broad axes, and hatchets. Those are the general categories, and also the racing axes. I do a lot of racing axe handles. So, let's start with the racing axe. It's something I know pretty well. So, if you have a big axe, whether it's a high test, whether it's a large plum from back in the day, Tuatai's, engineered for axemen, brute forge. So shout out to all those companies. There's a lot, and actually there's a lot of guys that are starting to get into this, which is pretty cool. So for those two, these guys, the Aussies and the Kiwis, have been doing this a long time. Okay, and I've been friends with the gang at Tuatai, Ed Fawcett and the gang down there, Stu and all the gang, for a long time. Okay, I started buying axes from them actually through Bailey's mail-order catalog back in the USA from California in the late 80s. Okay, so that's when I started with Tuatai. and that's all I've used and swung. However, there's some new ones coming out, and we tested some here a few weeks ago. If you go to one of my old videos on testing axes, you'll see us actually swinging some of those, and they're nice axes. Of course, I have a history with Tuatai, so I'm kind of partial to them, but there's some nice axes out there. Okay, don't get me wrong. However, chopping competitively, it's been done in North America for probably 50, 60 years. It's been going on in Australia and New Zealand a lot longer. And they know their stuff, okay? So give credit where credit's due. Oh, shout out to Brad. Delos, I see you won the trophy again, buddy. One for the old timers. Like I know you're not that old, okay? I will be 60 next year, so I mean I'm creeping up there pretty quick. But Brad's still good, and man, it's nice to see him keeping pace with the young pups. But anyways, there's a handle. This here is an Australian pattern handle. Now, it is a nice one, and I got it from an Aussie, from Mitch Hewitt. Mitch needed some handles, sent that out as a pattern, and I've been using it ever since. Okay, so it's got a nice, because we're swinging a 5-pound razor blade, you want a palm swell on the other end of that handle. Okay, and actually that's what East Coast is known for. We're known for our big flares at the end of our axe handles. Okay, because in all honesty, if you're using the tool, the last thing you want, and of course up here we get winter for 6 months of the year, last thing you want is your hand coming off it, and it's usually not that way. It's usually when it goes, the axe is going. So you want to avoid that, obviously. So this is an Aussie patterned axe handle. Okay, now there's also the New Zealand racing axe handle, and this one here came right from Ed Fawcett. It was in one of the axes he actually sent me, and it's the same thing. It's got a really nice palm swell. Okay, so significant. Okay, and there's a reason for that. Okay, because you want to hold on to that thing when you're swinging it. Now it's a little bit thinner. Okay, on the main part of the handle is a little bit smaller. But they both take your typical 5-pound axe, so they're usually at least 2.5 at the top. That's why I make them, and I'll give you a little bit extra to play with, and 3/4 of an inch this way, and that's all you want, because a lot of people don't want to do a lot of work when they're putting that handle in. So I make these ones a little bit tighter to the eye. Okay, now typically the East Coast, I give you lots to play with at the top. Okay, so if the handle comes, you say, man, it's too big. You bet it is. Because if it's too small, you're up the creek without a paddle. So it needs to be a little bit larger, and then of course you whittle it down. So for the big ones, this is the New Zealand handle, and again it's probably just got a little bit more length down here, which really doesn't add much, because you can see right here with my hand on here, you get probably an extra inch. So remember that when you're ordering the handle, okay? The New Zealand handle, maybe it sounds like it's an inch longer, but really where your hand is shortened up on it. The Aussie, you're pretty close to the end of this one. Okay, so I can make these in whatever length. The most common, ladies, if you're watching, 28 inches is the most common one I make for ladies. And if I know it's going for a lady, I will make it a little bit smaller, because your hands aren't quite as big as guys, generally speaking. I have a daughter, Emily, and she is a good girl. She is a sizable girl. Okay, she's built like the boys. She's got big shoulders. She can swing an axe like no one's business. Okay, she's a good sized lady, and she'd like a little bit bigger handle, because her hand is a little bit bigger. Now my other daughter, Katie, who has the heart of a lion, she didn't get black. The kids, we keep saying, the first 3 kids stole all the genetics. Ben, Nate, and Emily took all the size genetics, and Katie was left with not much in the size. So my second daughter is shorter, but do not let the size of her fool you. Emily's a lot bigger and a lot stronger. I know that, and beautiful kids, all of them. But Katie has got the heart of a lion. So what she lacks in size, she makes up for in heart. So what I would do for Katie is, when I make her handles, I make them a little bit smaller. Now Emily could probably use a regular size axe handle, because her hands are a little bit larger. Okay, So that's a racing axe handles and what we do there. Now, for hatchets, for smaller ones, okay, usually these things are 15 to 20 inches long. Okay, this one here, this hatchet handle here, 13 and a half. So that's when you get anything under 20 inches, I call it a hatchet handle. And again, you can make all kinds of different shapes and sizes. This here was this is a throwing axe handle pattern I had for a guy named Bradley. It was 13 and a half inches. This for all the guys that do the little hatchet throwing. We was down to St. John here a few weeks ago and did that with my brother Brian and his family, Trish and Kylie and Kieran and one of their friends. And it was a lot of fun. We had a hoot. Also took my my other nephew down there, Kirk. But for these handles, for hatchet handles, you can do a lot of different things, okay? So basically, if I have the size, and whether you want much palm, again, I like a little bit of palm swell. And this one here doesn't have much, of course, because it's for throwing. And there's also this hatchet. This is for my buddy. And I haven't heard Dave. Hey, listen, Louheed, where you at there in Timmins, man? This came from him, straight from him. This is a throwing axe. And I took that because he sent it to me because I wanted to have the right kind of handle. And you can see there's very little flare on the bottom of this because it's a throwing hatchet. Okay? So those are hatchets. Now, the other thing I will say, and I've said it before, you can put whatever handle you want in whatever axe you want. Okay? There's no rule that says you have to use this handle in this axe. Doesn't matter. It's all personal preference. Now I'm not, there's a lot of guys on the Axe Junkie site, Axe Addict sites. There's a number of Facebook sites that guys are on there, and they know a lot about old axes, okay? And I got a good buddy here in New Brunswick, Bill Hooper. He's an axe collector. He knows a lot about axes. Black Ravens and Walters and Campbells and you name it. Okay, those guys know a lot about axes, okay, and what the vintage handle was that came in those axes. Now, that's not my forte, okay? My forte is the racing axes. Now, I'm learning a little bit as I go along, okay? And I've got 35, almost 40 years in this business now. But I'm still learning, okay? And I'm willing to learn because I don't know much. And actually, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. But anyways, I don't necessarily know the precise handle. So, for example, I got a guy from Nova Scotia, Joel Carroll. Great guy. He's got a pile of axes. So he has a Boy Scout axe, and he said, I want an authentic Boy Scout handle in that axe. So, of course, Google. We all go online, Google it, and you come up with, hey, this is what the actual original was. Now, the original for the Boy Scout axe is about like this. It's plain Jane. So to make it authentic, I did make it a pretty plain Jane handle to send to him. But I can do anything. I can take the plain Jane and then put a nice flare on it, whatever. Like, I'm just drawing it out. I can make it whatever you want. So, as far as handles go, if somebody would ask me, listen, make me an authentic handle for a double bitter. Well, that's called a cruiser handle, which I learned here actually about 10 years ago through the junkies. And that's what they call it, a cruiser handle. Now, I always just call it a double bitter handle because my grandfather had a double bitted axe and I put handles in all the time. But a cruiser handle is basically, it's a double bitted handle, okay? So depending on the axe, the double bitter that you're putting on the top, usually they're about, I'll always give you 3 inches by 1 inch. Almost all axes will fit on that handle, that eye, 3 by 1. And of course, that's why I always want the rough size of your eye, so that I make sure I give you enough to shape it down. And of course, it's long and straight, and then there's usually a little bit of a flare at the bottom. Okay, now I make throwing axe handles, which are standing right here, and I've got 3 or 4 of them there ahead. Usually the throwing axe handles are straight off the end, no flare at all, because of course you're throwing it. So they look a little bit different. So there's a throwing axe handle. That's for mine. If it ever, now it's nice and thin, but if mine ever breaks, this one here is the replacement for it. Okay, so again, just straight off the end, that one there, and there's not a big eye in it because it's for a Tuatai throwing axe, and they don't take they have very small eyes. Okay, so for your double bitters, most times it's the cruiser handle, but sometimes, oh, I see another one I forgot. Sometimes for a double bitter, you'll want this, okay, an Adirondack. And all it is, it's the double bitter, so it can go either way at the top, but you've got a handle at the bottom. Okay, now you can flip it around and use it this way. You got to come up a little bit from your flare at the bottom, your palm swell. But the Adirondack is a pretty neat little handle. It's for a double bitter, and it has the single bit palm swell and stuff on the bottom. So those are the two for double bitters. Now, there's also, we got to go back to the racing axes. Because even though these guys, there it is right there. Now, we're not the only choppers in the world. And a shout out to the Spaniards in the Basque country over in Spain, and a good buddy of ours, Valente. He's an unbelievable chopper. He took on the whole Canadian national lumberjack team when they were over training in Spain, and they all chopped it, you know, like they do, the great big round log, and he single-handedly bested our four competitors. But these guys are built for endurance. They chop a long time. So the Basque axe handle, so this is the Basque handle pattern here, and you can see it's almost identical to the chopping axes up front here, but this is where it differs, okay? And what it is, it's got a fairly substantial knob at the end, okay? So it's not coming out of your hand, and there's a reason for it. Once you chop for 20 minutes, you're tuckered, okay? So that knob helps you hold that axe while you're still able to swing it, and it's not going to come out of your hand. So the big difference with the Basque pattern is it's got that really substantial flare knob down here at the end that your hand cannot come off of. So that also goes with the racing axe patterns. Okay. So we just finished up with the double bitters. So again, cruiser handles or the Adirondack for those. Now, when we get into pole axes, okay, your regular, some people call them boys axes. I call them pole axes. That's what Dad always called them, was pole axes. But there, and then there's actually, I guess there's another division as well, which would be the mauls. But let's stick with pole axes for a bit. Now, there's a lot. You've got a lot of options with pole axes. Now, Bob Heatherton, the guy that showed me how to make handles, this was always his go-to. Okay, this is a traditional boys axe. It's small at the bottom, fits really nice, a small little palm swell at the end. But of course, there's a big enough eye up here for almost anything. Okay, so typically your boys axe is anywhere from 24 to 28 inches long. Okay, this is it. Now this is the Hetherington. It's my most common, most popular handle pattern that I use. Now, shout out to my buddy Carl. I haven't heard from Carl. Hope he's still doing well out in Edmonton, Alberta. But Carl Peterson makes pack horse axes for guys in the backcountry, and this is the pattern he likes because it's got a substantial palm swell, but it's small. Okay, it packs well. So this is his go-to. Now the other thing. When I was looking up these, there's a few other things you can do as well. There's other patterns in this. One is the French curve. Okay, now this has got a lot of sweep in it. Okay, it's a really pretty handle pattern. French curve. This one here. Oh yeah, this one here. Just a little tiny split here at the bottom. Just a little whisker one. And I'm going to use this in a few weeks. And I'm going to show you how to fix that. Okay, so I've got a bunch of them sitting over here with splits in them, and I'm going to show you how to repair. If you get a nice handle like that, and that's a good handle, and I never send it out as a number one, but you can easily fix that, and it'll never bother for the life of the handle. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So, there's that one. Now, the other one, I found this, of course, my buddy Wayne Moore, God rest his soul. I was down to his place. He was an axe collector, and he had this beautiful feeling handle. It's a vintage. It's really thin, okay? So if you order the vintage from East Coast, it's a thin handle. And I've showed you, search out the video from a few months ago, But I did some testing, okay, and we busted a bunch of handles here in the shop to show you that thin handles actually will outperform the big, thick, heavy handles. Because the weak point on those big, heavy handles down here, modern handles, is up here at the eye. On the old vintage handles, the strongest place is up at the eye because the rest of the handle is nice and thin. Okay, so that's a vintage handle. And I make a lot of those for pole axes as well. Now, I was online, somebody asked years ago when I was making these, they said, hey, have you ever seen the American felling axe pattern? And I thought, no. Now, the American felling axe will take a little bit bigger axe head. Okay, my axe box is out in the garage because I could show you. I have my great-grandfather's axe that he used in the woods. And it's not as big on the pole as our Tuatai's, but the bit is 7 inches. Like, it's very impressive. So for that, we use an American, or you could, and people have requested, the American felling axe pattern. Now, this is it. So the neat things about the American felling axe is it's got quite a substantial shoulder. Okay, now typically, when I hang things, I'm not big on shoulders, as you know. Okay, now Buck and Billy is, but Rod's not. So you got to whittle this down, okay, and make it fit. The other thing, it goes along fairly straight. It's got a pretty substantial sweep in the bottom here, okay? And look at this, okay? This is the palm swell. So when you order, and see this how it goes in? Really pretty, okay? When you order the American felling axe, and people have before and say, put a fawn's foot on the end of it. The beauty of the American felling axe is that pretty palm swell. Okay, if you ask for a fawn's foot, you're taking this off. Okay, so I usually, if you're ordering that and you've ordered it online, I know that this is what I'm putting on it. It's actually a fun one to make. Look at this one though. Look at the grain in this. Okay, there's a little bit of heartwood. Now, we're going to get to the heartwood sapwood eventually, okay, because there's a lot of debate right now online about heartwood and sapwood. And I'm going to talk to you about heartwood and sapwood, the difference and how they stand up and all that. Okay, that's coming up. So be sure you subscribe. But there's a little bit of it on here, and I usually call these salt and pepper handles, okay, because they're dark and light, and they're really pretty, okay. And depending on where you're getting your wood, usually I try to get at least, now this is the end of the block, this is from the bark in, I try to get at least 3 inches of clear wood here, okay, so that most of my handles are nice and white. But sometimes you get a log and you've only got about 1.5 inches. So what that means is where your heartwood starts, all of a sudden it's you don't have as much room here. So when I'm drawing out my patterns on these, sometimes I'm going to get some of this heartwood on the inside because I want my handle to be straight, okay, straight down the grain. So sometimes you're going to take in some of that. It's usually in the palm swell, or it could be anywhere on the handle. But don't sweat that, okay? No, don't sweat that. I'll leave it there because there's a lot of ground to cover on that one. So that's the American felling axe. Really pretty little handle, okay? Now I haven't used one a lot for a working axe, so I'm not sure how well they work that way. But it's a really pretty handle. So there's the Vintage Moore, there's the Hetherington, there's the American felling axe. What else do I have here? I think that's most of my patterns. Now I also have on the website, on the East Coast Lumberjack website, you can order a custom handle. And a custom handle, even though there's a picture there, is what you want. Okay, so you may say, okay, well I've got this, I want to replace this handle in an axe of my grandfather's. Send me a picture of it. Okay, give me the rough measurements of it, and I can replicate that. Okay, all I'll do is just blow it up on my printer, and then I'll use that as a pattern, and I'll make you that axe pattern. Okay, you don't have to send the handle. I mean, you can if you send the handle, then of course I'm going to use the actual pattern itself. But you don't have to do that because it's kind of expensive to send stuff. And speaking, glad I remember this. And speaking of sending stuff in the mail, now I know a lot of people. I get a lot of people first time out, and they're going to order one handle, and I don't blame you. Okay, see what this guy's up to. Does he actually make quality handles or not? Don't worry about all the comments online that people say I do. Okay, because again, you don't know this jughead from out in the east. Who knows what he's capable of? But I will make you a quality handle. Okay, there's no question. However, I can send one handle from here almost anywhere in Canada. It'll be about one handle is around $20-$25 in the mail. Two handles is 25 to 30. Three handles is 30 to 35. Four handles is still under 40 bucks. Okay, so do the math. It's a lot cheaper, okay, because the shipping for my handles is probably one of the biggest parts of the expense. It's better to get multiple handles, okay? Just saying, two handles, you'll at least save a little bit on the shipping. One handle, you're going to say, holy mackerel, it cost me as much to get it shipped here as a handle did. Exactly, that's my point. Okay, so I am saying that because I'm trying to help you. Okay, like it's easy. I can blow. Now I've got the other thing I want to say is for guys watching, I've got a ton of orders. Okay, so I've been scaling wood at Grant's up in Woodstock this winter, and so that takes 2 days a week out of my workshop days. And then I've got about 4 tree jobs I got to run the chainsaws on, and I'm clearing a lot for guys. So there's a lot on the East Coast Lumberjack's plate right now, but I've got a pile of orders. My biggest one is going down under, and that's coming up here in a couple of orders. But I've got about 25 orders on my clipboard. So what happens is when your order comes in, I fill out a form for the East Coast Lumberjack order form. I put all your stuff down, how many handles, the species you want, whether it's hickory, ash, yellow birch, whatever, the pattern. Okay, so I need to know your pattern. And when you fill out your order form, everything's there. You can put all this stuff on the order form at the end. You don't have to pay for your order when you order it online, okay? I only charge you for the order before it goes out. And I've only been stiffed twice. And surprisingly, both by Canadians. A guy from Saskatchewan and a guy from Quebec. And I don't know whatever happened. Maybe, I don't know, something went south in their life. I don't know. And again, it's whatever. But in all the years I've been doing this, that's it. So I mean, there's not a lot. Most guys everybody's been great. So you order online, I'll send you the bill, and then of course once the payment comes in, I put it in the mail. Now the other thing I'll tell you is that the packaging and shipping charge includes the boxing, the packing tape, the envelopes, the business cards. There's a lot of stuff that goes into packing and shipping. So if you say, hey, Cumberland, man, you charged me 30 bucks, and it only cost me 22 bucks to send it out through a Canada Post. Well, the first thing is I'm making an estimate based on shipping these things every week, so I'm usually pretty close. And, of course, there's also, that stuff all costs money, okay? So there's a little bit more for the packaging and shipping. So whatever your shipping rate is, there's a little bit more on top of that to cover those extra expenses. Just so you know up front, okay? So anyways, that's pretty much all my patterns, okay? And I can make you what you want, this custom handle. Now I also have, I just turned a few of these out the other day. Okay, these were on the old Duplicarver. That's a PV handle, okay? So I'm going to finish it up. I actually just got an order for 2 more of these. If you're local, they sell them up at the Valley Chainsaw in Woodstock. Okay, they have a good supply of my PV handles up there. But I've got a few here. I've got a few PVs, and maybe you don't know what a PV is, okay? It's what they used back in the day to roll logs. So I've got a few of these ready to go, put some handles in. My young fella's got a sawmill, so I got to do them with a PV handle because my racing PV handle is up there, and we'll get into all that eventually when we talk about PV handles. Anyhow, that for the most part is most of my patterns, okay? And again, I'm not limited to those. I can make anything else you want. The other good thing is I can change the size of your eye, okay? Oh, mauls. Jeez, we almost forgot mauls. So a maul is a splitter, okay? Splitters are typically a little bit longer. Sometimes they're fairly straight. So this is a maul handle. They're fairly long. Usually they're 32 inches, 34 inches long. But they can have either round eyes or they can have oval eyes, one of the two. Now oval eyes, of course, you can put a regular handle in them a lot easier. But if you have a round eye, don't sweat that a bit. They're hard to find in the hardware stores, but I can make that. Just tell me, Rod, I need 1.5 inches by inch round eye. That's what we'll make you. That's what we'll send you. So that's for the mauls, okay? So they are a little bit bigger. They're a little bit longer, and the struggle with a long handle, okay? I'm going to tell you this. Making a long handle straight is a challenge, okay, for anyone. The longer I make handles, the less I like them. So here's one here. This American felling axe is 36 inches long. Check that out. Straight as a die. Now, thank heavens, because I've done these before, and for whatever reason, when you cut that handle out of a bolt of wood, now this wood has been dry quite a while, so thankfully, all the movement in that wood has happened. Now sometimes if your wood is under tension and you start cutting it out, and it's a long handle like this, it will move, okay? And all of a sudden you get a little bit of a sweep somewhere in it. Now if it's like that, it hangs here, okay? This is my bad side. These are not number ones. That's my number one side over there. Now I haven't hung many there because I'm usually just filling orders lately. But this one here, thankfully, when I did that baby there, it came out just as straight as a die. And I could tell usually when you start cutting your handle wood, if you see that wood pry out or pinch in, you know there's tension in the wood, okay? And you may have trouble keeping that straight. Now, I'm going to do a video on that, okay? How to fix handles that aren't straight. So that's coming up as well. So if you're interested in any of these things, PV handles, how to fix a handle, if you've got a little split at the bottom, a check at the bottom, there's a way around that I'm going to show you. And also how to bend them. And I usually send instructions out with all my handles, so all this stuff is in there. But I like putting it out on video so that if you want to learn about it, you can click on it and away you go. Okay, so I'm going to show you some of that stuff in the future. Anyways, that's probably enough for this week. Listen to this old fart. I'm headed down to Nova Scotia tomorrow, going to the last competition of the Canadian Intercollegiate Lumberjack Association of the year. It's in Truro. So I'll be down there with the steel guys. Andrew Kitt's coming. I think a few other people are going to be there, and we're going to talk about our upcoming training camp. So anyhow, that's what's if I get a chance, I'll try to do a little bit of filming down there and show you some of the college kids wailing away on some of that beautiful popple they're going to have down there. But in the interim, keep your axes sharp and keep it sharp. Keep it in the wood. Anyways, thanks for joining me.